Government contracting for commercial real estate and beyond. And by the way, I got my notes today so that we can break this thing down in segments for investors, developers, and companies who simply want backing from the U.S. federal government so that you can scale your business to a whole nother level. By the way, it does not matter if you are a company here in the Houston area, Dallas, Fort Worth, San Antonio, Atlanta, Seattle, New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, Miami, St. Louis, Philadelphia, DC. It does not matter. Shanghai, Dubai, overseas. There is a way in independently, or if you want to work through us. We can talk more about that later. However, before we get into the commercial real estate aspect and all of the other industries, what makes us different from everybody else talking about this same thing with government contracts? I'll tell you, the difference is you're getting this information from the perspective of the insiders. Given that I have a 17 plus year career as a former federal procurement and contracting official. That's the difference, because it's going to keep you out of a lot of trouble where compliance is concerned. I'm going to tell you, I've watched a lot of these videos out there. I don't like throwing people under the bus, but a lot of these videos are teaching and selling this information in such a way that breaches a lot of federal laws. Okay, so look, when you get this information, you want to be sure that you are getting this information from someone who has actually done the job or have actually put in the work, done the research, and can actually show you some kind of track record, all right? So let's get government contracting, the bigger picture. Now, let's defer to these notes a little bit, all right? Now look, so before we take a deep dive into the real estate angle, let's look at the bigger picture here, right? All right, so every year, the U.S. government awards over $900 billion in contracts. That covers everything, a range of things from commercial real estate and leasing, construction and infrastructure, professional services and consulting. So think about that, professional services. So many people think that they can't work with the government because they just do administrative stuff. In other words, if you've had clerical jobs or medical administration jobs or warehouse administration, jobs where you've had to be a very precise secretary, executive assistant, this is where you shine. Paralegal, everything that requires administrative skills, spreadsheets, Word documents, if that is your lane, professional services, consulting, that is you. As y'all know, most people can't write. Y'all know most people are terrible writers, okay? Let's just say what it is. So if you are a person that has a good handle on administrative skills, professional services and consulting, look at this, IT, cybersecurity, that is huge. People literally getting rich off, man, look, my neighbor. So I live in a very exclusive community in Richmond, Texas, which is a suburb to Houston. Look, I can't say the exact community I'm in, but 2 doors down, there's a gentleman. This brother is living it up. He has a cybersecurity contract that we helped him get about a year ago, and he is killing it right now. Medical services, medical administration, which ties into what we just said, equipment sales, emergency management, logistics, transportation. They're not necessarily the same. Fleet services, janitorial, and facility support, facility services, landscaping, veterans programs, and watch this, transitional housing for veterans. That's huge. Research and development. All right, so by the way, this is just a fraction of the different things you can do with the government. However, now, I just want y'all to know that. But now we're going to focus on, we're going to take a deeper dive into the commercial real estate angle though. And the reason we want to do that is because it's probably the most overlooked, yet the smartest for those of you who are developers and investors and you have access to commercial real estate property, because there are so many aspects, so many things you can do with it. And there are so many different ways the government would like to work with. Why is commercial real estate particularly a hidden gem in government contracting? I'll give you 5 reasons. The federal government leases millions of square feet every year. By the way, that number is in the triple-digit millions. That could be almost $1 trillion. The government leases in the millions, triple digit millions of square feet every year. That's square feet in the United States and overseas. Okay, so look, that means that they're leasing office space for all kinds of operations, everything from medical, warehousing, transitional housing for veterans, as we talked about, training centers, you name it. As a matter of fact, the VA, for those of you who don't understand how the VA system works, right? So every major city has a main medical center, and then for the people who live out towards the suburbs and those outlying communities, we have what's called CBOCs, or community-based outreach clinics. Well, guess how they get those? You guessed it, people like you. They are leasing these buildings to the they're leasing these buildings to the VA, and guess what? Typically, which gets to my next point, those leases range anywhere from 10 to 28 years on average. That's huge. That means you don't have to chase tenants. Now think about that. In traditional commercial real estate, many of you are dealing with everything from low cap rates. I mean, some of you are accustomed to cap rates that are so low that you think 8 to 12% is high. And it's really not that great. It's not. The reason you think that's high is because you have not done commercial real estate with the federal government. Now, what's the other thing? Rent is guaranteed. I mean, it's coming to you it's being paid by the US Treasury. So you have money coming to you that comes from a bottomless pit, basically. It's that simple. Oh, by the way, properties don't have to be perfect. They just have to be eligible to be positioned, which means they will allow a build out. And typically what will happen in that build out process is the government will reimburse you up to 8%. On average, sometimes higher than that, whatever that build out cost is. So there are so many different angles that you can hit this with, right? So a good guiding thought, most investors chase corporate leases, but the government is the most reliable tenant in the country and they never stop leasing. And you don't have to chase them for your money. It makes more sense to me. So what exactly is the government leasing right now? Office space for agencies like DHS, Department of Homeland Security, in which FEMA is a sub-agency to, right? For those who don't understand, FEMA is aligned under DHS. DHS also is who the Coast Guard is aligned under. So think about that. It's a whole lot of money available with that, right? Social Security Administration, they have an expansion. The VA, as we just talked about. GSA, General Services Administration, Department of Defense, Department of Energy. That's going to always be a growing need. Department of Commerce, so on and so forth. So look at this. Medical space for VA expansion and outpatient care. The government is looking for office space for that. Hotels and motels to be repurposed into veteran housing communities. Warehouses, logistics hubs, secure storage facilities, transitional and emergency housing for disaster response and homelessness. All right, so quick insight in terms of us at Sky Acquisition. So we've helped convert properties most investors would usually pass on. But we explain to them, no, you don't have to pass on that property. You can reposition and repurpose that for a multi-year federal leasing opportunity. It's really that simple when you have the right guidance. All right, let's move on. Now let's talk about the federal leasing process and procurement terms you need to know. All right, let's get with this. Sources sought. Now look, if you're already registered in sam.gov, which I presume you are, and if you're not, we can help you with that. Just reach out. But if you're already registered in sam.gov, you may be familiar with what's called a sources sought solicitation. Here's why that's so important, all right? You do not skip over sources sought, because many times sources sought, that's an opportunity to give that agency something that is so uniquely you, to where if they love it, if they buy into it, if they buy into your pre-proposal or whatever response you send, and they like the way you do that, they like the way that you're proposing that specifically, they like your unique approach in writing, the government can do what's called a notice of intent to sole source. Now, guess what? Whenever they need that, They're not even going to the open market. They're not even putting that out for bid or competition. They're coming directly to you. That's huge. So when you see a sources sought solicitation, you do not skip that over. You look at that as an opportunity to come out blazing so that you can present a case as to why the government should only use you whenever they need that. All right, let's move on. RLPs and RFPs. Now look, many of you are already familiar with the term RFP, request for proposal. Many of you see that in every industry, but unless you've worked in government procurement, you don't really understand how sophisticated that can be, right? We also help with that as well. But in leasing, when you're leasing to the government, you will typically see RLP. Don't get thrown off by that. That is just a modified RLP, request for lease proposal, because we're dealing with government, with federal leases, all right? So RFP, RLP, request for lease proposal. RLP is just a modified RFP. Then of course there's the evaluation process where the agency performs their review. We can help you understand that and make sure you're in front of that so that you can be ahead of your competition. Award and lease execution. This is typically when companies get lazy and develop bad past performance. This is why it is so important to have consultants and project managers who understand the importance of compliance and how to answer incidentals. This gives you a great relationship with the government or past performance so that they will want to use you again, and then your company starts taking all the contracts. Now you have generational wealth on autopilot for generations to come, right? That's what you should be doing this for anyway. Now, reimbursement options. If you get a lease with the government, right? You get tied into a lease with the government to where you have to do some type of build out and come out of pocket up front. That just talks about the various reimbursement options. I've seen the government reimburse people for build outs anywhere from 9 to 15%, down to 8 or 7%. It just depends on that agency and the level or the extent to which that build out needs to be done. So investors, owners, developers, small business, aspiring contractors, everyone who is out there and you want to be able to leverage your portfolio or your business in a way that is scalable or backed by the US federal government. Reach out so that we can discuss how to shape the scope of those procurement pathways and what that would look like for your company so that you can be attractive for doing business with the federal government. International investors, that's huge as well. We work with foreign firms to navigate United States government federal leasing as well. Reach out. We have a lot. And last but not least, before the bonus that is, right? All of you should be asking yourself these questions. Could my property be leased to a federal agency? Could my next acquisition be restructured for government revenue? Am I building based on market trends or to long-term mandates? That's huge. We talk about that all the time because everything that we do here is never based on market trends. You don't want the long-term security of your business initiatives to be tied to market trends. You want to be over here in this space that we're in so that everything that you do is based on pre-allocated funding as opposed to having to watch market trends dance up and down. That's no way to live, right? Well, the beautiful thing is we have that experience, that insider expertise, as well as the relationships, and all of that experience necessary to help you navigate those procurement pathways so that you can create that level of opportunity and long-term security for you, your loved ones, and all of your business initiatives. All right, so reach out. As a former agency, contracting, and procurement official, I promised you this special bonus. Let's talk about subcontracting for a moment because a lot of people are getting in trouble. So there was once this video that was blowing up Facebook and Instagram and some other platforms where people were talking about how you can get rich with the federal government just being the middleman. Wow, that is a 100% no-go. What they were saying is that, you know what, you don't have to actually know how to do the job. You just get it and then sub it out. Get it, sub it out. Let me tell you something. When you do that, that is a federal crime. You are operating a pass-through. If you get any contract, you have to be 51% owner of that contract value. You have to also do 51% of the work. You can't just get it and sub it out, get it and sub it out. And the people who are putting these videos out there, that lets you know these people are following trends. They're basically in this for a money grab. They don't really care about stuff like the federal agencies. They don't care about housing veterans. They don't care about actually making an impact. These are hustlers. And that's what they're acting like. Okay, so look, you don't want to get into operating a pass-through, because I'm going to tell you, especially under this administration, it's going to come back and haunt you. For those of you who have, and you need to, for those of you who think you may have already done that, and you feel like you need help navigating what to do next, reach out as well. But please don't get caught up into that whole little getting a contract just so that you can sub it out. That's not how that works. That is operating a pass-through. It's illegal. And they are finding people out. People are getting locked up. People are ending up in federal prison over that. You cannot just get it and sub it out. If you get a contract with your federal government, you have to be 51% owner and own 51% of the work. Federal acquisition regulation, notice of limitations on subcontracting. Look at other bonus. Look, this part is specifically for people who's interested in housing homeless vets. I take this personally because I'm a veteran, and guess what? I've experienced many hardships after the military. So, for those of you investors who are specifically interested in acquiring underutilized apartment communities, hotels, and converting and repurposing those to house homeless vets, we have an amazing partnership here at Sky Acquisitions with our sister company, Vet Mentors. Now, a bit about Vet Mentors. They have housed more than 5,000 homeless vets. They are Chicago-based, and they partner with us here in Houston. We handle the procurement side. They handle the supportive services for veterans and family side. Together, it is a marriage made in heaven between the two companies. So, between Sky Acquisitions and Vet Mentors, we can help you create those pathways, give you all of the instructions, all of the compliance standards from the procurement aspect as well as the PR. Make sure that you are fully compliant. Think about this. Miss Yvette Jones Swanson of Vet Mentors, she has housed more than 5,000 homeless vets. By the way, she is also a SBA and VA designated service disabled veteran-owned small business. Here's why that's important, because those communities can be adopted by the VA into their procurement portfolio. So you are no longer having to rotate tenants. The government pays you one large lease for the entire property. And in those types of situations, the government will typically come to service disabled, veteran-owned small businesses first before they go to the open market. So if you want more about that, just reach out. The information is below.